Well, welcome, Dr. Dan, to the podcast. And you are in Northwest Indiana, is that correct?
That is correct. Crown Point, Indiana.
Okay. And you started BioHacking for Dogs, and motto is thrive, not survive, which I love. And you've been in practice for over 25 years. So,
That is correct.
share with our listeners a little bit about how you evolved to this holistic approach and why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay, well, that's interesting because if I wasn't going to become a veterinarian, now I always wanted to be a veterinarian. Every kid wanted to be a veterinarian. So, 8 years old, I wanted to become a veterinarian. But my junior year of college, I tried to get into vet school and I didn't get in. And I was like, uh-oh, I've been planning my whole life to become a veterinarian. What's going to happen if I'm not going to be a veterinarian? So I was actually going to go to chiropractic school.
Oh my goodness.
so so that's and I actually the next year I did get into veterinary school, so that was great. And during that time, I had also I've been in martial arts my whole life, and I had broken my jaw, and I had broken my jaw in the martial arts studio, and the owner of the martial arts studio was a doctor of acupuncture. So he actually treated me with acupuncture and some Chinese herbs and such. And I was like, that was my first introduction to that aspect of it. So when I graduated from vet school, I was going to become a food animal veterinarian, and so that was everything. I was doing pigs and goats and cows, dairy cows and beef cows, and horses and such. And my boss did not like horses very much, so guess who got to do all the horses? So I got to do the horses. And what was interesting is that I had gotten a flyer in the mail saying, "Hey, what about this chiropractic for animals?" I was like, chiropractic for animals? And it happened to be 1 hour. The only place in the entire United States was 1 hour away from the practice that I was practicing at.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I was like, I can do that. I can do that. I don't even have to pay for a hotel, airfare, or anything else like that. I could just drive back and forth. And that's what I did. So I went to Options for Animals. This was in 1996, right after I graduated from vet school. And I became certified in animal chiropractic in 1997. In 2000, I had gone out, visited a friend at the Indio Horse Show in California, and met a doctor of acupuncture that was doing acupuncture on horses. And so I was like, of course, I need to add that to my practice. And that's how I started acupuncture there. In 2011, I ended up going to the Chi Institute, which is now the Chi University in Florida, and Reddick, Florida, which is just south of Gainesville, just north of Ocala. And I became certified in animal veterinary acupuncture at that time. So that's what I did. The majority of my practice after leaving food animal for 2.5 years, I started my own equine practice, horse practice, and the majority of that started just doing some chiropractic. And then about 2010 or so, for the last 14 years, all I've been doing is holistics, chiropractic and acupuncture on horses and dogs.
I love that.
Yeah. So fast forward now, for the last few years, I opened up a clinic in Crown Point called Balanced Motion, and started my online presence, much more online presence with BioHacking for Dogs. So that's
Oh,
where I'm at.
cool. And did you get much training in vet school with holistic modalities, or is that just something like you said you had to kind of seek on your own?
Well, that was, you have to think about it. That was about 25 years ago, so it was about 0%. So there wasn't even a club. There wasn't even a holistic club. It kind of started inklings about a holistic club my junior and senior year of veterinary school. So now I went to University of Illinois. That's where I graduated from, and now there is a holistic club there, and I've actually presented there before. It's been many, many years now, but I yes, there is more openness to it in certain areas. Like they've had some surgeons there that were also acupuncturists, or anesthesiologists that were also acupuncturists. So it's kind of cool. They don't have and they also started a rehab program in certain schools. So like Purdue University in Indiana has a rehab program. So,
Wonderful.
so it's kind of cool.
It's growing. There's more of a need.
It's definitely growing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, talk to the listeners about biohacking for dogs.
Okay, so biohacking for dogs is very similar to biohacking for people. How I got into it was, again, through my martial arts, through jujitsu. At 50 years old, I became a world champion in jujitsu at my age group. And the only way to do that is through biohacking modalities for myself, like making sure I eat correctly, making sure, I mean, for me, it's like doing cold showers, drinking hydrogen rich water, breath exercises, stuff like that. So, but some of those things, like the PEMF, I've used, some of those things can be incorporated into the dog world. And it's basically just trying to, the good foundation of biohacking is, good fresh food, quality water, proper exercise, including core exercises, and rest. So as long as we have those foundations, then we can add on top of that some of the things like some supplementation and such. So it is the art and science of um, the art and science of optimizing your health in order to have more longevity and a better life, to bring out the best in you, to bring out the best in your dog.
Of course, that makes so much sense to me. What kind of a diet do you recommend for animals in general, but for dogs, for example? We know the Purina is not the best, and some of the processed foods aren't natural, right?
Correct. So the thing is that I am a big proponent of fresh diets. So, and whether that is cooking for the dog yourself with a balanced diet, feeding raw or feeding partially cooked, those are my top three choices. I don't have a specific brand that I recommend. There are better brands than others, but honestly, when you look at the kibble, which is the majority of the dogs are being fed kibble, if you as a human were eating that, it would be eating like total cereal with a protein powder added on top of it. Now, we know we could survive on that, okay? But are we going to thrive on that? Certainly not. So when you actually, just the same thing for people, ultra processed food is not good for your body. It's not good to help you manage and thrive your whole life. So fresh foods are better to go for humans. The same thing for dogs. So when you look at a kibble, it is the ultimate ultra processed food. So we do not want to be doing that. The other component with that is that when you make a kibble is full of carbohydrates. It has to be in order to get a binding solution to make it a kibble. Dogs, unlike humans, even have we have a need for carbohydrates. Dogs do not. Dogs are protein centric. They're a carnivore, and so that their whole diet is based off of protein. In fact, when we look at it, their satiety, like their satiation, like in order to reduce their appetite, they need to meet a certain protein requirement. And some of these lower quality kibbles don't even meet that protein requirement. So they just are hungry all the time. And this is how they get obese.
Interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. Yep.
Huh.
Yep. So you'd have to go with a higher quality kibble, just even as a start, just to even meet their protein requirements. So to actually satiate the body so that they're not so hungry all the time. So fiber is another big deal in them. So a lot of times, like even when we have my fresh food diet dogs, a lot of times they're not getting that good quality fiber in order to help with the microbiome, in order to, again, help with satiety, satiation and such. So it gets into be a big, huge thing when we talk about biohacking for dogs, as far as like, what should we be feeding these dogs? So, and a fresh food diet is the way to go.
Right. Now, I know, of course, for us humans, there's a calculation based on our body weight for optimal protein for the day. Is there like a calculation like that for dogs, or how do you know?
There is Yes, there's definitely a calculation for dogs. It's based off their metabolic body weight. And of course, the calculations off the top of my head, I can't. But it can be very similar to people as far as like how much they weigh. But
Yeah, I figured there's something, just to kind of give you a ballpark estimate, rotating the protein sources, so like beef, chicken, lamb, seafood, or just.
yes, and when you look at it from the same thing with people, if you have sensitivities, it is based on that as well. So if you have a dog that has a sensitivity to beef, you kind of want to avoid that versus chicken versus fish. But a wide variety is always best, and if you can rotate your protein sources, that would be best for your dog. So, but it's based on the individual. Just same thing with people. It's like some people can't handle certain protein sources, certain grains, certain types of food. They can't handle that, and so you have to individualize each diet for the dog based on their sensitivities and such. For sure.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I know from, some of my patients, if they have a symptom, the dog keeps licking its paws or it has hot spots or something like that. So few actually look at the gut or look at the diet. Let's figure out why it's doing it and not just give steroids for the issue, correct?
Absolutely. That is actually very critical as far as like everything starts just with like in humans with the gut. So when you look at the Peyer's patches, which are in the intestinal tract, which house the immune system, if you have an inflammatory response going on in your gut, it's going to affect those Peyer's patches, which is going to affect the T lymphocytes and the B lymphocytes, which is what activates your immune system in your body. And same thing is where you're going to have that hypersensitivity and you end up with allergy type symptoms, you end up with digestive type symptoms. So absolutely same for people. It's just a little bit different as far as like what we can eat versus they can eat. So
Similar to humans, there's common supplements that are kind of standard of care. What about for pets? Any certain supplements that jump out that you recommend for your clients?
yes, for I have 6 that I usually recommend. I even wrote an ebook about it. So, but a big one for pretty happy, healthy dogs, fish oil is your big one to help with your omega-3s, with your EPA and your DHA. Collagen, that's kind of interesting. It's actually more important than, say, your glucosamine, chondroitin sulfates. Collagen is a much more important aspect for helping with joints and helping with their tendons and ligaments and your joint support. Collagen is the way to go. It's also going to help with the hair coat and help with your nails. That is the one caveat. If you got a dog that has problem with clipping the nails, collagen is going to increase the growth of the nails. So we have had clients that have complained about that in the past. It's like I prescribe for them some collagen for their dog to help them with their joints, and they're like, my dog needs its nails trimmed more often now. It's like, oh hey, the collagen's working. So
That's a good sign.
and, and it's a good sign. And then I'm a big proponent of mushrooms as well. So we could go on a 3-day talk about mushrooms as far as like using those in your dog's diet. Anything from lion's mane to help with my older dogs with cognitive disorder. And you can use some cordyceps mushrooms a lot for my dogs that are athletic.
Sure.
If they need a little bit boost and such, we're adding that. And of course, the immune system ones, your reishi mushrooms, your shiitake, your maitake mushrooms, those are going to be beneficial for your immune system. So again, it becomes individualized, but it would be good to even rotate those. They're a good fiber source too to help with the gut.
Yeah,
So we use those a lot.
that's
So
awesome.
those are
Like mushrooms are very underutilized.
very much so, even in people. And then the other thing is that then you got to go look at the quality. So even some of the most popular brands of mushrooms, they harvest them a little bit too early, and so you don't get the full bang for your buck off of them. The other thing is that they a lot of times they're just not growing them on the right substrate, and so that becomes important when you actually are looking at mushrooms and using them for your body for biohacking methods to make sure you get, or even for medicinal purposes, making sure that you're getting a good quality one, good quality brand.
For sure. Do you find that pets do better with like a powder or a liquid format?
Well, there's two companies that I use, and one is more powder or capsule, and the other one is liquid. And they both are, it depends on the dog. So we have some dogs that can just sprinkle the powder on their food, and it's great. Like, that's my own dogs. You know, I can sprinkle it on their food, they just eat it up. I have other dogs that will not touch. They don't like mushrooms, just like people. There are people that don't like mushrooms. They don't like the taste of them. And so there's dogs the same way. They don't like the mushroom taste. So you can either give them a capsule form, or there's another company that does have it as a liquid form. So, and it's much easier to just squirt a liquid, have them give that nasty look in their face, but give them a treat right afterwards, and they're happy. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I've done that with my, I have two Weimaraners, and I give them a homeopathic liver support, just to kind of help detox anything that they're around. And I squirt it in his mouth and then give him a liver treat, and he's good to go. So,
Right.
yep.
Very good.
Now, for what kind of conditions do you typically do acupuncture for?
Mostly my painful conditions is the number one. The way that my practice is, I see a lot of sporting dogs and a lot of older dogs. So I use a ton of acupuncture for that. And I use a lot of acupuncture for my neurologic cases, which is, you know, when you look at it, when you take it away from the holistic aspect, take it away from traditional Chinese medicine and look at it more as evidence-based, when you're looking at acupuncture, it is actually treating directly the nervous system. Each acupuncture point is a nerve ending. Well, this is where sometimes these cases, when you're dealing with a dog that has a significant issue in the central nervous system, the spinal cord region, where it's not functioning, I need a functional nervous system in order to have the most benefit of acupuncture. But so it's interesting. You use using acupuncture to stimulate that nervous system to get the nervous system to function again.
Sure.
Those are some of the more troubling, harder cases to do sometimes, is these cases where the dog is paralyzed. But then again, it's also a miracle when you have these dogs come in, they can't walk, or they're having very difficult time, they're swaying in the back end. You do some acupuncture along with some PEMF, and boom, they're starting to walk again. And it's great. That is so rewarding, but it can be very difficult. So that's what I treat. I usually treat pain, so arthritis and with injuries, and then neurologic issues. And then, of course, then we can always do things with the gut, the immune system. I treat allergies, helping with itching. Almost anything that is an imbalance in the body, acupuncture can help. A lot of times, though, we need to add things such as Chinese herbs or some other supplementation to enhance the effect of it. So, but
Humans.
just like humans, yeah.
Now, I know in my practice, sometimes I'll hook up electrodes to the needles. Do you do that as well with the pets?
Yeah, especially with neurologic. There's actually been some research studies done on electrical stimulation of the acupuncture, which is working just as well, if not better, in some cases, for intervertebral disc disease, a disc rupture for dogs. It works very, very well using electric.
Oh, that's good to know.
So I use that, but because I have a MagnaWave or a PEMF machine, I tend to use that a lot more. Dogs are a little bit more comfortable with it. And what I mean by that is that hooking up the electrodes is into the acupuncture points. A lot of dogs will shake. It's like,
Sure.
you got to hook them back up again. And it becomes, like a human, they'll lay there and stay there. Just stay there. Dogs, not necessarily. That doesn't happen all the time. So it's much easier to just put in dry needles and stick over an electromagnetic device that stimulates them. So is it as effective? If I have a pretty painful dog, I will go ahead and stick the electrodes on. Or if I have a paralyzed dog, I will stick the electrodes, because I need more oomph out of my acupuncture.
Makes sense. What are your thoughts on CBD? I have a lot of patients that always ask me about CBD for their pets, for arthritis and health and longevity. What are your thoughts on that?
CBD is it's one of those things. I do recommend it. All right. But you have to use a quality product. You have to use a full spectrum, one that does have a little bit of THC in it. Small amount, just enough to activate the receptors in there. But it's similar for people in that it all depends on how many endocannabinoid receptors they have and how responsive those endocannabinoid receptors are. and you don't know without trial and error. So you give a guesstimate. Oh, well, here's a little bit of CBD. How does your dog respond? Does it help or not? And you're going to have to wait a couple weeks and then add some more. Or you might, give some CBD and your dog is comatose, and it's like, okay, you got to give a little bit less. Yeah. So it's extremely variable. So it's not really an open arms policy for veterinary medicine just because of that variability. And it's not one of those things where it's like, okay, this is the dosage that you use for this size dog and it's going to work every time, because it doesn't. So there's a lot of variability in using CBD, but it does help. It helps a lot with some pain. I've been finding to use PEA, palmitoethanolamide, more as a fatty acid, which has some endocannabinoid response versus CBD for pain, but I still will use it. CBD for pain, especially if I have a dog that has some anxiety as well. So it really helps very well with anxiety and with pain. And then my seizure dogs that are not responsive to medication, you could use some pretty high dosages of CBD in order to help them with their seizure activity. Problem is that you're going to have a dog that is pretty sleepy using the CBD until they get acclimated to it if you're using the high dosages of it.
Sure, that makes sense.
But yes, I use CBD in my practice. But let's say just for my painful patients, I typically will use PEA more than I will use CBD. Yeah. And a lot of clients are coming in on CBD already because they've already been told, hey, you should try CBD. So right. I just work with it.
Yeah, just like with humans, yes, but there's probably better stuff.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. And that's the one thing I do want to caution people. A lot of people will use isolates, and there has been some research done on CBD isolates actually raising liver values in dogs. So I highly recommend avoiding any of the CBD isolates. You need to go with a broad spectrum or a full spectrum CBD. In my preference, using the full spectrum is better.
Right. Any thoughts on vaccines for dogs?
That is a very hot topic.
No, just like with humans.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's quite interesting. When you look at your distemper and parvo vaccines, let's take specifically out distemper. Distemper is very similar to measles, same family as measles vaccine. So if you are a person that has been vaccinated themselves for measles, as a child, you get your measles vaccine. As an adult, do you get a measles vaccine? No. Why? Because you're protected. It's a lifelong protection. Same thing with distemper. It's the exact same family. So if you give your dog a distemper vaccine, the majority of dogs, you were talking like 90% of the dogs they have lifelong protection after giving them appropriate vaccines when they're puppies. Yes. So I have holistic clients that do not vaccinate their dogs, have not vaccinated their dogs. It gets to be a little bit scary in the beginning with parvo, because parvo is very prevalent. It's ubiquitous throughout the environment, and you can have puppies end up with parvo. So this is where my integrative side comes in. I'm not one of those that's like, don't vaccinate anything. It's just more appropriate vaccination. And especially when I'm combating veterinarians that are giving vaccines every single year. And it's like, you are destroying their immune system. Stop doing that. Stop giving them. And especially like a lot of times they'll have aluminum hydroxide or other immune stimulants in there to make the vaccines work better. So, these immune stimulants help the vaccines work better. Well, they also are yelling at the immune system. And if you're yelling at the immune system over and over, so let's look at aluminum hydroxide. Aluminum stays in the body for a couple years. So now it's like you're giving aluminum hydroxide every single year, just ramping up that immune system. No wonder they have autoimmune disorders, they have allergies, they have cancers, all associated with having the immune system yelled at. So I am really much a proponent of proper vaccination, not over vaccination. And when we are giving these dogs these vaccines every single year, you're over vaccinating your dog and yelling at the immune system a little too much. So then you can talk about lepto and Lyme and those. I don't give those to my own dog. The Lyme vaccine is extremely questionable as far as like how effective it actually is. And lepto is one of those. The problem is that if you have somebody with an immune system disorder in your household, lepto can be transmitted from your dog to a human. So I end up having my clients case by case basis as far as that goes.
Interesting. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know we do vaccines when they're puppies, but we don't do vaccines after that.
Yeah.
We use essential oils for ticks and mosquitoes and
Perfect.
stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're part of the family, so
And
I treat them like a kid.
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You want to try and remove that's that again some of the foundations of biohacking is to actually remove the toxins in the environment, and some of that is vaccines, heartworm medication, tick and flea medication, and then all the same things that you do for your own household. Like some of the worst things for the dogs are those plug-in scents
Yeah.
for the house. It's like they're more sensitive to it than we are as people, and it's bad for people. So why the heck would you have it in there for your dogs? So for sure, removing those toxins in the environment as best as you possibly can is going to help the dog thrive versus just survive.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, if our listeners want to find your ebook and find you, what's the best way they can find you?
Biohackingfordogs.com is obviously the best choice. It's direct access to my website where the ebooks on there is going to be taught, events will pop up on there. Individual consultations shows up there. And of course, my blog where I have information all the time. But of course, you can always look Instagram, Facebook. I'm social media all over the place. So for sure, Dr. Dan Beatty, just if you look up Daniel Beatty, you'll get the comedian. So I'm not the comedian. So you have to add Dr. Dan Beatty or Daniel Beatty, the veterinarian. So,
Got
and
it.
I'm trying to get biohacking vet as, if everybody knows me as the biohacking vet, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
It
And
was wonderful talking to you, and congratulations on your new baby. It's
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you. We'll be sure to
And
share all of our social media of yours and then tag the ebook on our shop page as well for all of our listeners.
fantastic. Thank you very much. That is wonderful.
Enjoy your day. Thank you again, Dr. Dan. I appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you.